Hey, welcome back to Happy Place Home Studio and for our series on live streaming from scratch. This is part two, which is about improving your sound. You know, many of today's computers, tablets, phones have built-in sound that's pretty darn good, built-in cameras that are good. And for many purposes, you really won't need to extend your rig in some of these ways to have good enough sound, good enough video for your purposes. But the purpose of this series is to give you alternatives. And if you're really serious about live streaming and want to have the best quality that you can, to allow you to meaningfully extend your system and improve the quality and capability that you have. Sound is a big deal in a lot of live streaming, and you want to be able to not only have good sound for your own voice, like with a good microphone that we'll talk about, but you also want to be able to bring in music and sound effects and other tracks of audio information. So the setup that I'm going to recommend to you here will allow you to do that. The way that I use it, this very same setup, is that I actually have my bigger workstation here that has digital audio workstation software on it and allows me to bring in all kinds of things and combine them and mix them in the way that I want and then feed them into my live streaming rig. There are alternatives to what I'm showing you, of hundreds of alternatives. And I do reference one because if you're going to keep your rig smaller, then you might want to have a little more capability with the audio interface that you use. So in part two, what we're going to cover is an audio interface for your Mac computer. The same one will work on a PC as well. And then talk about a good microphone that I'm using and that I recommend. But again, as in all other things, there are many choices out there. All right, so let's get into this, part two of live streaming from scratch. Keep in mind, I don't have any sponsors or advertisers on my channel. I'm simply showing you a piece of equipment that I use, which is the Motu M2 audio interface from Mark of the Unicorn. I use a lot of the Mark of the Unicorn gear. I have found it very reliable and easy to use. And this particular unit is especially easy to use. It automatically configures itself on your Macintosh, so setting it up and installing it is a snap, and it's very well supported by OBS as well. Let's take a look at this guy. Okay, I'm on my favorite site to buy gear from, but you can get this from anywhere that you can find it. And this is the M2, and you can see on the nice zoom-in interface here that it has two multi-jack TRS and 1/4-inch inputs on the front. Each one has its own separate monitor channel, so you can move in and out of monitor mode if you want to. It's got a nice graphical interface for monitoring your input, separate monitor volume control, and earphone jack, which you can use for monitoring or just output or both. Taking a look at the back, you've got your power switch, MIDI in and out. You've got the USB-C interface, footnote that for a minute from now, and then both RCA and 1/4-inch out for the monitor inputs. It comes with a USB-C cable, but bear in mind that this is USB-C on one side, but standard 2.0 or 3.0 USB on the other side. So if you are using a device that only has USB-C, you do have to have an adapter to use this unit. As you can see, as of the date of this video, it was about $169, so I think that's a really nice value for the quality of this unit and the quality of the sound that I get out of it, and its ease of use. A couple of other notes on the Motu M2. One is that it does not require AC power. It gets its power from the USB-C only, but it still has a power switch, which is cool. Two is that Mark of the Unicorn really has excellent free support, and they actually pick up the phone when you call them, except during COVID, where they will call you back, but they almost always call me back within just a couple of minutes. And finally, I have also used this unit on my PC, and it does work quite well, although the drivers are a bit different than they are on the Macintosh. One final note on the type of audio interface that you choose to use. The piece of equipment that I've shown you works really well for me, but one of the reasons that it works well for me is that I used a little bit differently than you might. I have an entire software mixing system that I feed into the M2, for example. So for that reason, you might want to look around a little bit and take a look at the different types of audio interfaces that are available, because it depends on what your application is, whether you're going to have a sound that you want to bring in from other sources besides your microphone, which you usually do, music, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of things that might go into that. So here's an alternative that you might want to look at. That's another YouTube video that I got a lot of great information from. If you go into YouTube and you do a search for the SM7B Loaded Wombat, you'll find Loaded Wombat's video, which in this particular search was the second one down here. And Loaded Wombat has a terrific channel, a lot of great information on it, and this particular video gives you an alternative viewpoint on the type of audio interface that you might want to use, because it has a lot more functionality and a lot more things that might come in useful for you if your entire setup is just the kind of thing that we're talking about here. Now, of course, it goes without saying there are hundreds of solutions out there. On my channel, I'm presenting one that I know works from end to end and giving you every step of the way, but that doesn't mean you don't want to look around a little bit. Again, my purpose here is to help you get going from end to end with a good solution. And you'll find that there are a lot of ways for you to expand that solution as you move forward into the future. All right, it's time to actually install our M2 on our Mac computer. Now, there are quite a few variables in this, of course. You might have this or that model of Macintosh. You might have USB-C. You might have USB 2 or 3. So there's a couple of variables here. Now, my intention is for you to have the information you need right here in this video. However, Mo2 makes an excellent setup video that you might want to take a look at. It covers everything about the M2 and how to set it up. My video, to proceed, all it really assumes is that you have unboxed and unwrapped the M2, that you've got your cable, and if you need a USB-C to regular USB adapter, that you have that as well. But here's the video from Mo2 if you want to look it up on YouTube. If you go into YouTube and do a search for Mo2 Setup M2 or M4, if you got the 4-channel version of the M2, then you will find these videos that pop up. When I did the search, this is the order they popped up in. There's a setup for Windows right at the top there, and then there's an unboxing, and the third one down is the setup for Mac. You want the official Mo2 videos because they're pretty current and they're pretty accurate, and they give you great information. They're also very short. So there's no harm in taking a second to look at those videos before you continue with mine, or you can just continue with this video if you have your M2 unboxed and ready to go. Okay, let's proceed and let's get our M2 installed and ready for use with OBS. Okay, I have got my M2 turned on and ready to plug in via USB to my Mac. I'm going to show you live what happens when you plug it in. I'm going to do that by going to my sound preferences on my Mac, and you'll see that I have a few audio devices here. Yours may be different. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to plug the USB in to the Macintosh from the M2. In this case, I'm doing that with an adapter. What you'll see here is in just a moment, the M2 will completely self-configure and will appear in the interface screen. When it does that, I don't need to configure it as an internal or external source for the Mac itself. I can do that if I want to, but we don't have to do that just to use it with OBS. So there it is. It is ready to go. That's plug and play. Now we'll start OBS and we'll let OBS know about the M2. There's different ways to do that, but we're going to do that as an internal default source by using our settings, going to the audio setup, and we'll just change our mic aux setting to the M2. And that's all we really need to do. Now at this point, I do have a microphone plugged into the M2, and we're going to talk about the microphone in just a few minutes. So I should be able to see the input as soon as I remember to bring the microphone over to where my mouth is. Always a challenge, right? All right, and as soon as I do that, I start seeing that I, yes, do have sound levels. And you want to pay attention to the sound level. You don't want it to be too close to zero. And we'll get into that right now. So the sound level, as with any audio recording, zero's the highest you want to get. You don't want to go into the red really. So you can use your input gain on the M2 itself to get that audio level where you want. Then you want to use your advanced settings, which you get to with the gear, for your mic and aux, which is where your M2 is plugged in. You can increase volume here or decrease it. You can change your balance. And you can also change what you're actually hearing. The default is monitor and output. For live streaming, I like to turn the monitor off. I want to hear what my audience is hearing, but you can set that to your own preference. This concludes the basic audio setup portion of this video series with the M2. But there's a lot more to learn out there about OBS and about audio. So if you're interested, you'll find a lot of terrific content on many channels out there in YouTube. Doing good keyword searches such as with OBS, audio, M2, etc. will locate videos that are very specific to this particular setup. But if you want to explore more, there's a lot of great information out there from a lot of great creators. Now it's time to move on to the second half of this video, which is about a new microphone setup for you to consider. So continue on and we'll get right to it. There are many different types of microphones that you can get. You can get them new and you can get them used in almost any budget range. When I asked my representative where I do a lot of my business, which is at Sweetwater Sound, this is the recommendation that he made, and I've been very happy with it because I have had many Shure microphones, and they've always been terrific microphones. This is the Shure SM7B, and I got it in a bundle configuration, which was nice. And it came with the microphone stand, which I'm just going to give you a little warning. When you first get it, you don't understand it because you can't get it to stay in place unless you have the actual 7B attached to it. So the counterweight is what makes that little microphone stand work. So obviously, this is a great microphone. I think it produces great sound, and I really enjoy using it. But you need to find something that works for your voice, your situation, your budget, etc. I, again, am not sponsored by anyone. This is simply a product that I use. Plugging in your new microphone to your M2 is very straightforward. With your microphone cable, take the XLR and plug it into either the left or right channel firmly. And when you plugged it in, you can use the input gain to set the level that you need by looking at the OBS audio interface. As I mentioned, there are a lot of microphones out there and a lot of different price ranges. You can get the 7B used in really good condition, as you can with most electronic equipment for your studio, from a lot of different sources. So that's another thing to check into. If the new price is a little too high for you, you can probably find a used one for much less money. Okay, we have covered everything on improving your sound, from getting an audio interface to a new microphone. And I hope that you have enjoyed this video in the series of videos about going from 0 to full speed with your live streaming. If you enjoyed these videos, please join the channel and leave any feedback that you want that's constructive. I'm very open to feedback. I am learning myself, so there's tons of mistakes I'm making still and things I can improve, and I'm very interested in knowing how you think I can do so. Thank you again for joining us on Happy Place Home Studio, and we'll see you again really soon.